So, hello, and welcome to Truth You Can Wake Up To. I'm Samuel William, and I'm speaking to you on the 19th of February 2013. I am, of course, broadcasting from Truth Towers, North London, my flat. It is currently 11:32. Now, this episode has quite an explosive title. It is titled Warning, Warning. British invasion of Africa. And what am I talking about? Well, a few days back, in fact on Valentine's Day, I had the opportunity to visit the wonderful, bountiful and pretty Houses of Parliament. I wandered in, I went up the stairs, and I sat down in one of the conference rooms because there was a keynote speech by an MP called Jim Murphy. He is the Shadow Secretary of State for Defence, if we can still use that word, defence. He's not the Secretary of Offence. No, we don't want to call it that. He is the Secretary of Defence, Shadow Secretary of Defence. And he made a keynote speech for an organisation called the Henry Jackson Society. The Henry Jackson Society is one of these wonderful, wonderful think tanks that advise foreign policy to politicians and to government, etc. The Henry Jackson Society has as their tagline, democracy, freedom, human rights, and global government. Sorry, I made that last bit up. And global government. Democracy, freedom, human rights, and there's a big picture of the world. And the Henry Jackson Society, you will notice that the words "the society" is in red. What does that mean? I don't know. The Right Honourable Jim Murphy MP is a Labour MP. So this guy voted for the war on Iraq. He said, "Go in there." He said later on that if only he'd known what was going to happen, he may have changed his mind. But this guy is essentially talking on behalf of the Henry Jackson Society about, and the keynote speech is called Prevention, a new model for intervention. Prevention, a new model for intervention. Prevention, intervention, prevention, intervention. Do you remember the episode I made about alliteration and how they like to use it because it confuses the masses? In fact, during this speech, he said that the domestic public... He's Scottish, but I'm not going to put on a Scottish accent. He said the domestic public is weary and wary of international ventures. Weary and wary. Anyway, so I went in there and I sat down and I put on a nice, I put on a shirt and a jacket. I didn't wear a tie because I'm not into hanging myself or just wearing symbolically a noose around my neck. So I put on a shirt and I went and I sat down, and it was a bit sweaty, and it was filled with MPs and members of the House of Lords and some people studying for PhDs in economics and warfare, I guess. I don't know what they were all doing. And we sat down and we listened to half an hour of the Right Honourable Jim Murphy MP talking about stuff. Now, what did he talk about? Well, it was this keynote speech was mildly boring, but very interesting, because he was essentially talking about foreign policy as it should be presented to government for adoption. He was also talking about the foreign policy of the Labour Party when they are in power. He said, when we rise to power, this is what we shall do. And he was talking about intervention and was talking about Mali, of course, and North Africa, stuff that's been happening in Mali and, of course, Algeria and all of this kind of stuff. But he kept putting in these three little buzzwords. It seems that if you want to be taken seriously in politics nowadays, you really, really, really have to just mention three things and have your policies based on three things. I bet you're wondering right now what these three things are and why I'm rambling so much. The three things are climate change. He mentioned that endlessly. that the need to really sort out the political problems of Africa is because of climate change. Yeah, right. And he also mentioned Al-Qaeda, of course. If you're an international politician, if you're a domestic politician but working for an international agenda, you have to talk about climate change and Al-Qaeda. These are the global fear-mongering threats that are very, very difficult to pin down, and technically they don't really exist, but the fear says that they probably do, and they probably will, and they're going to grow, and they're going to take over the world. So we have to act outside our borders. In fact, this guy said again and again that long gone are the days where the UK can act just solely within its own borders. He said long gone. So climate change, Al-Qaeda, and of course the financial crisis. This is another thing which says we cannot just act domestically. We have to form an international coalition of the willing to weaponize our economy so that people can be used up as the tax basis for international imperialism, or globalization, of course, is what it's all about. Globalization, climate change, Al-Qaeda, globalization. These are the three things that foreign policy is all about. Now, the main things that this guy was talking about was really just this. He was saying that the economy worldwide is not really in the right place for hard power in North Africa. He was saying that military intervention was costly, and that that public opinion says that it's not very popular. So instead, he was talking about soft power, soft forces, or what he actually called cultural units. Now, he was also going on because of the worldwide economy being in recession. He was saying that therefore there is a large need for international coalitions of cultural intervention through NATO. Now, I will put up a link to the full tape of this that I recorded. I think it's 32 minutes or something like that. And if you're interested, click on the link I'll put in the description. But the main thrust of this keynote speech about defense was actually about invasion, about putting people into Africa who can work to solidify the positive Western philosophy of coalition. So, and he specifically was talking about all of those states that do not have proper governments. So he's talking about the bringing together of all of these disparate, as he called them, countries into the international flavor, the globalist flavor, where they could work on battling climate change, battling terrorism, and battling the economy. Now, a quick look at this guy, Jim Murphy, actually explains quite a lot, because it was actually a WikiLeaks cable. One of these cables came out talking about the fact that this guy, Jim Murphy, was involved in a covert effort to resist Scotland's independence. So he was basically forming together lots of sort of unionists to oppose Scottish independence, but he was doing this covertly on behalf of Westminster. So you can kind of understand that this guy is the right guy for the job in terms of cultural interventionism. He also mentioned a couple of times the British Council. And the British Council, if you look them up, the title sounds very innocuous, like it's just, the British Council. Sounds great. A load of people just talking about British affairs. Well, the British Council really is a corporate political tool that is used to invite British or Western interests into places like North Africa, the Middle East, and all that kind of stuff. So they really, really streamline the oil industry, the resource industry, and it's the British Council essentially that is going to be the democratic arm of the intervention in North Africa. Let's not forget, for example, the BBC World Service, that radio station that for decades has been doing a sort of cultural interventionism, but a sort of propaganda. The BBC World Service is sort of like a westernized propaganda arm that gives a slant on international events and is broadcast obviously on radio that you can pick up at huge distances. The BBC World Service famously and rather controversially, of course, started to take a substantial amount of its funding from the US State Department, which really just says it all about where this is going. But you see, this is all being done underneath the radar of popular opinion. No big news stories are going to come out concerning soft power intervention. Not like they do with hard power intervention. There's going to be no, oh, there's a no-fly zone here, or a convoy of whatever has been destroyed by French and British forces. There's going to be none of that, but there is going to be a slow and steady integration between military forces from Britain, France, Germany, Sweden, America, you name it. They are being formed into a sort of what they would call a cultural resource, actually cultural weaponry, very, very, very similar to actually what happened with the Roman Empire. And this is the thing that really hit me as I was sitting in that very ornate room filled with all of those sweaty politicians, is that this is the Roman Empire. What we're seeing here is with the Roman Empire when, due to their further tax commitments because of their overburdened welfare state, they didn't have the tax revenue to actually enforce the Roman Empire through the use of hard weaponry. And so, of course, they turned to the Roman Catholic Church, a cultural intervention, a cultural weapon. The one thing that this guy Jim Murphy was saying as well is that these cultural forces will not only be there to streamline globalization, but also they will be there to collect information. All of these forces who are going to be multilingual, this is who they're going to be training. They're going to be multilingual. They're going to be intelligence agents, which is basically exactly what happened with the Roman Empire as well. Of course, the churches, the Roman Catholic Church, collecting information and feeding all of that information straight back to Rome. So again, do listen to the tape that I recorded of this. As I said, it's 32 minutes. It's very boring. It's mildly boring, but very interesting. I'm going to disable comments on the recording, so if you want to comment further on what you hear, come back to this video and hopefully we can have a good discussion and share some knowledge about what on earth is going on here. So thank you very much for listening. I've been Samuel William. It is currently 12:32, just to show you how long it takes me to record an episode. But until next time, take it easy.